I can't believe how many years I've said no to this thing, and God's been like, you must film this thing, and I've been saying no. But hopefully me being here and showing up for something that for me is kind of weird will make you show up. So first YouTube video. So this is going to be entrepreneurship focused because this is my love and my passion and the thing that I live for. So it's going to be a journey, and I feel like I'm going to regret not documenting this entire journey of becoming, like, you know, whatever God has wanted me to become. If my story can like help somebody else, then we've got somewhere. And yeah, so I'm gonna do one episode a week about entrepreneurship and just everything I've learned during the week, because I learn a lot, and even in one day. So I'm gonna do that. There's sometimes in my life where I'm like, I wish I had written this specific lesson down, but then I didn't, and then I have to come back with like my tail in between my legs, like, what lesson was it that I learned that time? And like, if you don't document these lessons, you forget them, and like 20 years later you're gonna look back and be like, I wish I knew everything that I knew in the beginning. Louis Vuitton is the clothes and not the person, and I think that's for me a big lens that has had to reshift in my head, where it's like, I'm not African authorized. God gave it to me, but I'm not that thing. I feel like in the beginning of entrepreneurship, like, you have this insistent belief that you need to be recognized by other people, and that's what gets your job done. And like, I think it's an insecurity thing, because you know to an extent that you're new to this, and like, yes, you don't have as much experience as somebody else would have in your position, right? Or maybe like, you know, for me, like, I'm 20, so obviously I'm new to this, and obviously I don't have that much experience. Let me actually say it like this: if you do things for yourself, it wouldn't grow. Building an African entrepreneurship platform, it can't come from my own self-aggrandizing needs. Like, it's not for me to be a self-centered person, like, it has to look like this because, you know, I want people to see me. A big thing has multiple things intertwining. It's not just one person. It's not just Elsie Kyoko, right? It's every entrepreneur that I'm doing it for. It's very easy to forget that there's somebody else on the other side of the phone. When you see, you know, 100,000 views, 200,000 views, you see metrics and numbers and calculations and measurements, and you completely forget that there's somebody else on the other side of the screen actually consuming. I texted an entrepreneur, and I was just thanking him for like constantly engaging with the page, and he was like, you don't know how many people's lives this page changes. And I was like, and I smiled, because I was like, I completely sort of lost my humanity in a way. I don't mean like lose, like entirely lost it, but it was just a thing of views and likes and comments and saves, instead of I'm changing other people's lives. And I feel like there's a different commitment that you have between, because it made me realize like this is actually a big thing, and like I actually need to show up fully. And I think that's also why I've come to YouTube, so like I actually have no excuse. And my friend said this, he was like, because he has an NGO, he was like, there's a difference between when you have something for yourself, like you're making a product for yourself, or you have a company or whatever for yourself, versus when you have that thing and you're responsible for somebody else. And like, you know, he was having like, I think, tensions in his life, and he just said to himself, like, at the end of the day, there's people who are depending on me. At the end of the day, there's people who are looking up to me to do this thing and to make their lives better. And if I refuse to show up, like, I'm not costing myself, but I'm costing, you know, thousands of people in this specific area who desperately need a different, you know, socioeconomic status. Yo, it's so heavy. But that's what it takes. People speak about denying the flesh. Let me tell you, there's a difference between denying the flesh when it's for yourself, because you're like, bruh, it's just me, you know, like, even if I don't deny my flesh, like, even if I decide not to change, then like it doesn't affect anyone else but me. When you have an organization, when you have a company, when you have an NGO, and there's actually people or things depending on you, and people have financed you, people have taken their time to invest in you, it's not optional. And then I was speaking to my friend, and my friend was like, and he was like, you can't allow fear to stunt you, because what's going to happen is it's definitely going to grow. And when it grows, more people are going to be needing you to show up every single day. And, you know, that's going to be your responsibility. So you can't just run away from that. And I was like, yeah, this running away avoidance business, it's not going to cut. You think that, you know, like, you think that it's not going to grow, and you're not going to be responsible for bigger people, because at the end of the day, you know where your goals are, and you know that people are depending on you to change their lives. And when people are depending on you, that's when you change. I started African Authorized because I wanted money. It became bigger, you know, it became a brand. It was no longer an Instagram theme page. Now, you know, when God just gives you that first instruction and you follow it and you're like, money. God's like, no money. And you're like, what do you mean no money, God? I'm broke. And he's like, no money. So that's exactly what happened to me, where like I started and it was for money. And then I started to see the impacts on other people that it had. And I realized like this is a lot bigger than money. And that's when I changed it to call it a movement. But like, you know, it's not just a movement. It's not just a platform. It's changing people's lives. It's all the people in Africa who are disenfranchised and have, you know, just like me, only have entrepreneurship as their choice. And like, if I don't show up, if I don't post content, if I don't, you know, eventually expand it, like I'm costing all of these people an opportunity at a different life. And that's something that can actually keep you up at night saying, if I don't show up, money doesn't matter to me to the same extent anymore. Money was an idol for me, and now it's no longer an idol, because like I'm actually responsible for people. And including myself. This pressure of like, oh, you're not making money. Yeah, I'm like, my friend, it's between me and God, because it's a lot heavier. It's not for you now. Even with the YouTube revenue to the African authorities, I have to put it back. It's not my money. And accepting that was really hard for me. I wanted fast money. I wanted a Range Rover outside. And I'm not saying I don't want those things anymore, but I think in one way it's the Dunning-Kruger effect. So that like realization of like, by the way, this thing is a lot bigger than I thought and a lot harder. And also, I don't want riches, I want wealth. And also, it's not that easy. Like, I'm not gonna just wake up tomorrow and be like, and it shouldn't be. Because if it comes to like, and actually I'm so blessed that like God told me like, you don't need the money, you're fine, like I'll take care of you. Because like I look at it now and I'm like, where would I would have blown all the money I got, and I would have compromised the quality of the brand for money, for my own flesh wants. This is what I learned, right? If you knock on the devil's door, don't expect that he's not going to open for you, because he will. The devil doesn't lie. He deceives, but he doesn't lie. And that's why you shouldn't be nosy. You shouldn't be looking into other people's lives. You shouldn't be focused so much on other people, because the devil can make you aware to things that you didn't need to know. And in that awareness, you start worrying about that thing. You're like, but why does that person have this thing and I don't have this thing? If there's one thing that like the devil has done for me in the last few months, is giving me so many temptations. So many. And the more that you have, the more that temptations come into your life. It doesn't get easier the bigger that you get. It gets harder. Because now the devil has more options to distract you with. You mean the guy didn't even have to go look for you. You came and you knocked. And this is the other lesson that I learned. You can't live in true reality. Like when people say lock in, like you actually have to lock in. Or you're actually going to find yourself in things that you shouldn't be in, simply because the devil convinced you that you should have something that somebody else has, without recognizing that in 5 years you're going to have a completely different life, right? Which is going to be a lot bigger than even whatever that person you think has. Or even that person has something that you actually don't know the full entire story of. You don't know if that person had to sell their soul to have that thing. You don't know the full story. But the devil tries to convince you that you do. He's like, this and this and this. He tries to put jigsaw pieces for you. Then you start adding your own salt there. Don't play around with the devil. You can't have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. Make a choice. You cannot do both. If you attempt to do both, there's consequences. The past will always seep into the future, and then your future will be affected by that. Like for me, coming here today is like me making the choice that I really am dedicating myself to entrepreneurship and what God's telling me to do. When you don't have a choice, that's your choice. And for me, I think that's where I've laid everything on the table. And like sometimes that's very scary, because like obviously I know it will work, but like if it doesn't work, like I've given up my social life. I've given up old patterns, old habits, old behaviors, all the old friends. I've given up everything and I've laid it up on the table. And yeah, you know, that's the price I had to pay and the choice I made. And like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But I can't go back now. Changing your life, it has to be an absolute. You can't be in the present and be in the past at the same time. And until you make that choice, your life will never move forward, because you're trying to live a double life. And one of my friends is like, whoever is lying to all of us about balance, there's nothing like balance. There's only seasons. Shout out. Anyways, as he said it, like, he's onto something, as much as I'm laughing at him because of the way he said it. I think people always say balance to try and justify the fact that they want to live a double life. And I think I used to do that, looking back at pictures from my past and people from my past, while at the same time telling God that I want a new life. And every time I looked back at a life I used to live, I was tainting a life I could live. I had to be fully non-aligned with the life I used to have. the energies of that life, the friends of that life, the patterns and behaviors of that life don't correspond to the new life. And I have to pick between, do I want the new life or do I want the old life? The only times when dreams become actual goals is when you start to operate on the level and energy and character and behaviors and attitudes in ways of life that attribute to that. A famous person dresses like a famous person, talks like a famous person, acts like a famous person, carries themselves like a famous person, calls themselves a famous person. That's why they're a famous person. But a person who doesn't dress like a famous person, doesn't talk like a famous person, doesn't attribute or call themselves, an author, a writer, a musician, if you don't claim it, then you can't be it. Not okay with people judging you for leaving everything on the table. If you're not okay with people judging you blank, then if you can't claim it, then you don't get to be it. You're either learning or you're repeating. You can't do both. And I can't remember who said this, but they were like, they were speaking about behaviorism and Skinner, but they were like, if you repeat a certain action again and you don't learn from the last time, then that makes you an idiot. I refuse to make the same mistakes twice or thrice or even 4 times, because then legally I can classify myself as an idiot. Definition Oxford definition wise, I'm an idiot because I went back and did the exact same thing I did the last time. You're taken into the same situation twice and you do the exact same thing. You didn't learn, you repeated. You're taken back into the same situation a 3rd time. You don't repeat the same thing that you did, you learned. That's how to check whether you're learning or you're repeating, whether you're moving forward or you're making the same mistake. And God will do this. God does this a lot, especially towards the end of your process. He will keep putting you back in the same situation until you learn a lesson. And many of the times you don't realize that the same scenario is repeating itself. You only realize that like slightly later, and then you actually clock, you're like, this is actually the exact same situation, just a different time, and I'm doing the exact same thing, I'm repeating it. How many times does God have to teach me the same lesson for me to actually clock in my head like this thing is like, bro, wake up, And that's why you always have to be aware and awake. Behaviorism, search up on it. The dog conditioning, search up on it. The rat conditioning, I think there's a rat conditioning, there was a dog conditioning, and then was it a baby conditioning? I don't know. Go search up on Skinner. You must always read upon psychology. That's also another lesson I've learned. If you want to be better, you need to understand why your brain works the way it works. You can't just assume that you're gonna learn lessons from information that you don't have and for systems and behaviors you've always been in. And this is big to what you consume. If you can't find a mentor, then be on YouTube, go subscribe to people who are positive and teach you positive lessons about how to change your life. But like if you can't do that, then it's tough, because like you really need to have an external person teach you that some of the behaviors that you think are correct are incorrect, and until you're exposed and gain that exposure, check YouTube. I've been in my house like for like 2 years, and like I've changed a lot, and that's only because I've been reading books and just proactively being a member of my own development, being my biggest advocate. Like, irregardless of what goes on around me, my mind is the only thing that I can control, and therefore if I can control my mind and I can't control the variables around me, then the variable that's here is going to be my strongest variable, because it's the only one I can control. So you have to take that mentality wherever you go, because you always be behind in your own growth because you're not being a proactive member. The things that you consume, the podcasts that you consume, the people you keep around you, your behaviors, your attitudes, all of that come into the same thing. And like, if you want to be high performing, then you have to be high indulging in good things for you. You have to be high on information that benefits you. You have to be high on good friends. You have to be high on a good routine. And that has nothing to do with anyone else. You're not overwhelmed. You've just lacked the ability of compartmentalizing your thoughts into a to-do list or into a list of things that are measurable, something that your brain can process and start to act upon. Because sometimes you say success, so obviously your brain is like trying to compartmentalize success, and it's like, how can I compartmentalize or define the term success? Success is so broad for everyone, so like your brain doesn't understand what you mean, and that's why you feel overwhelmed, because you haven't broken it down for your brain. Your brain is literally overwhelmed. It's overworking itself because you haven't clearly defined to it what you want. But if you sit down and you're like, okay, I want to be on Vogue in 5 years. I want to be on 40 under 40 in 10 years. Have a business that, you know, has a $30,000 revenue, US dollar revenue. I want to have a group of friends who also have their own businesses. I want to partner with a procurement training group. I want to have my own ebook and write it out. And then you say, like, maybe by, you know, February I would have at least gotten one thing of these lists done. And your brain knows that's the goal. People do it with vision boards, other people do it in different ways, but you have to have active verbs on your to-do list. Immediately you think of something in your head that you need to get done, you write it out. For me, I've been using to-do-list recently. You just write it out. And then also, like, if there's stuff that you know you're gonna forget, you use Notion, right? You get Notion, you use a Notion dashboard, you make your own really nice template, and you use it. A second goal setting or just progress tip that I learned is it's the 30-minute incremental rule. You get more done using a 30-minute timer than you get done having done 3 hours of work. You do 30 minutes on, you do something else for 30 minutes, you do something else, you come back to that first task again after 3 other tasks of 30 minutes. If you're like me, where I do a task for 30 minutes, maybe I'll write, you know, for 30 minutes, I'll do research, then I'll you know, clean my room, and then I'll come back after another 30 minutes. You get so much more done. I think for me, the 30 incremental rule has worked a lot better than trying to do a research paper for 2 hours and struggling to concentrate, struggling to come up with new ideas. I'm reading the same sentence for 1 hour. I'm like, it's not ending, like the same sentence every hour. Let me just laugh. The researcher posits that for 30 minutes, for 45 minutes, for 1 hour, and I'm not getting anywhere. Those of you who are looking for a productivity tip, for me, the 30-minute incremental rule has absolutely changed my life. I get so much done. I get so much of the same thing done because I'll do it at 11 p.m. for 30 minutes, and then I'll do it at 2:30 p.m. for 30 minutes, and then I'll do it at 8 p.m. to just correct like grammar corrections and stuff. And this I'm specifically speaking about the research. If you're trying to change your life, I advise you start working in smaller increments of time. Not for everything, but like for the smaller tasks that you need to get done immediately. Because also when you're on a 30-minute timer and you can literally see the time, you don't take basically like excuses from yourself because like, oh, you know, I'll do it later. Oh, I have 2 hours to do it. No, now it's like I have 30 minutes and then I have to go somewhere, or I have to speak to someone, or I have to do something else. Like I actually have to get it done like right now. I was investing my energy in things that, like, basically in other people. Then I watched something that basically said you can't fix someone that doesn't want to be fixed. And I realized how many people I was trying to fix, and God was like, just turn that energy inwards. Like, you don't need to fix anyone. Turn your energy inwards. All that energy you invest outwards, God is inside you. And if you focus on you, then your life will improve because also you're focusing on God. But if you focus on the world, then you're more susceptible to your own mind working against you and the devil using your mind against you. Doing something is better than doing nothing. It's just better to start your YouTube channel and be terrible at filming. Start your business and make no profit, sell your property, have no capital gain, zero interest on your land, than to sit around in your life and lament on the fact that your life is not improving. When you walk in your purpose, nothing stays on your head. You just move on because nothing really matters. Nothing really matters. It's just because you're so fixated on everyone else around you. That's why you think it matters. But when you walk in your purpose, nothing matters. Not even the disrespect that other people give you. Because you literally look at them and you're like... And then you get back to business. Because it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Except you. You actually matter to yourself. You're the only person who can change your life. The biggest answers come from the hardest moments. Jesus was not the Lord in Nazareth. His own people didn't believe it. I hope that teaches you a lot about your path. And the fact that people who are in your environment don't believe you can get to those places. Not because they dislike you. It's just because they're comfortable with the version of you they've seen for the last, for me, 20 years, who was a different person. Bye.